if the economy was better, people wouldn't give a shit. I'm just going to be very honest.
Is the No Kings movement going to carry us into the midterms?
Democrats have won or overperformed in 89% of all of the elections that we've had.
You cannot just talk about kitchen table issues. There are people whose entire kitchen table has been tossed over by ICE.
True at all. They're completely detached from reality.
That the definition of progressive is not what we are thinking it is anymore.
And I don't think that the American people want to hear from Democrats that, oh, they just need better training.
You got to actually stop all funding, and then you got to figure out a way of clawing back the funding.
That was the best outcome that Democrats could get. These protests, I just want to defend myself because people are going to attack me for my previous comment. My only issue.
Name one person in his cabinet who isn't associated with Epstein and this cabal. Maybe J.D. Vance, because nobody wanted him there. Nobody invited him. I don't know. But
I am sick of this shit.
We are a year into Donald Trump's second term, which means midterms are here, and the Democrats might have a shot to regain some power and put some brakes on the Trump train. And they've had some major wins recently. Dems had a clean sweep in Virginia. Mikey Sherrill pulled off a stunning victory in New Jersey. And this past Saturday in Texas, Taylor Ramet flipped a Senate seat that Donald Trump carried by 17 points. So some folks are optimistic that a blue wave is coming, especially in a midterm year with a lame duck president. Trump may not be on the ballot this fall, but his shadow looms large. Will MAGA voters show up without him leading the charge? That's unclear, but that's not stopping Donald Trump from stirring the pot again, because the FBI just raided the Fulton County election office in Georgia, seizing ballots, reigniting fears of election interference, and Americans are worried that there may not even be a free and fair election to win anyway. There is so much going on, and there's a lot to talk about. And today, I'm so happy to be joined by a beautiful group of people. First, I am joined by commentator and strategist, host of the Danielle Moodie Show, Danielle Moodie, host of the Katie Phang YouTube channel, Katie Phang, host of The Pulse on YouTube, Josh Green, DNC Vice Chair Malcom Kenyatta, and Texas State Rep Mihaela Plesa. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hey.
What's up?
how's it going?
I'm just going to say, howdy, y'all.
There is so much up. So, I mentioned the Texas race, and I think that is a pretty good place to start. I don't think that everyone really had their eyes on this Texas runoff this past Saturday. We know that Texas 18, that was going to be a Democrat, safe blue. But the runoff was really surprising. And I feel like a lot of people online were sort of tuning in as the numbers were coming in because they heard people online rumbling about the fact that like a Democrat may actually do this. Any reaction from anyone? Malcolm, I'll go to you as, the representative of the DNC, unofficially, not here, but.
My initial reaction is one of excitement. And frankly, this is really a pattern that we're seeing. If you go back to a year ago yesterday, since myself and Ken Martin and our incredible officer corps took over at the DNC, Democrats have won or overperformed in 89% of all of the elections that we've had across the country. This is the best off or odd year elections in the history of the Democratic Party, 89%. And what happened in Texas, I think, yes, it's cool to like flip a seat anywhere you can flip one, but people, I don't think totally understand how big of a deal it is and how big this district is. This is a district that has about 1 million people who live in this district. Senator-elect now, Taylor, was outspent by, I think he ended up spending maybe it's about 300,000. Republicans spent 2.2 million, I think, when it was all said and done. Donald Trump came in and endorsed in this race. And
he says he's never heard of it.
Overall.
Donald Trump doesn't know who you're talking about. He didn't even know there was an election.
he doesn't know a lot of things, which is why this guy should not be in the White House. But we know that this is one of those races that Republicans poured a lot of money into. But it was a race like every race across this country where Democrats have been showing up and showing out in massive ways. And a part of that showing out that I'm talking about are regular people stepping up to run. What's so incredibly inspiring to me seeing the senator-elect is that this is somebody who comes from a labor background, who's been on the front lines fighting for working people his entire career. And he told that story to communities in his district and really said, listen, we can continue the chaos and the incompetence and the corruption that we're seeing from Trump and his acolytes, or we can go a different direction where we actually have government focused on what it should be focused on, and that's making people's lives better. And that is a message that's winning out all across this country.
Yeah, Representative Plesa, quick question for you as the Texas voice on the panel tonight. What are we maybe not seeing outside of Texas? Is there something that happened on, a granular level that someone like yourself may have noticed?
Well, I just want to say that everything that was said is absolutely spot on. Democrats are really meeting the moment right now. And as someone who actually went and knocked doors in this district to help put a Democrat in the state Senate for the first time in that area in 30 years, I know that it wasn't just the fact that, we had a union member, a great candidate talking about the kitchen table issues. We also live in a state where Republicans just continue to mess up. We passed a voucher scam that are defunding our schools. This specific area is an area that has public schools that are good, that people want to send their kids to. There isn't a private school that is affordable that voucher would even cover. We see large attacks on communities of color in this state, whether it's Latino communities, African-American communities, Muslim communities. There isn't a minority community in Texas right now that the state legislature is not attacking. And at the same time, people organized on the ground. We were knocking doors in the cold, in areas that people hadn't spoken to somebody in years. And those connections really, really matter. And as someone who flipped the first district in Collin County, I'm sure you guys all know Ken Paxton. Well, that's my neighbor. I flipped a house seat in Collin County in 22. My opponent spent $4 million. But I knocked 10,000 doors personally myself that year. My campaign knocked 64,000 doors. So 1 in 3 voters had met me. And that's the same thing that happened with this senator-elect. People had met him. People had talked on their doorstep about the issues that mattered, our schools, our healthcare system, and just the overall attack on democracy in our state. And I think that, we can talk all we want about Democrats and reaching out to Democrats. But what happened in this state is that 51% of Republicans, came out and made the choice to vote for a common sense candidate. And I think that we need to look at that as a party in general, because that is how in Texas we're going to start flipping seats, not just at the bottom of the ballot, which I always say the bottom of the ballot is closer to your front door, but all the exciting races are at the top of the ticket, right? The state Senate, the governor, all that stuff, right? And so I think that this isn't just, a great thing it's a great thing for the whole ballot, right? It's really going to pull people to understand their voice matters. And then when we unify around the things that matter, we can elect candidates that actually listen to us.
And I'm gonna ask Josh because we hear a lot about we continue to hear the grievance politics of white folks, and so I am just wondering, as someone who analyzes politics very closely, what is your opinion on the groups that you think will be the most important for Democrats to reach in 2026? Is it white men like you? Do you feel like that is who Democrats need to cater to?
I don't think they should cater to anybody, really. I feel like as long as the Democrats are unapologetically pro-worker and pro-family and anti-war, they would steamroll every single election in this country. I mean, the MAGA movement right now is toast. I mean, Donald Trump, his 4 key campaign issues, they've all been failures. The economy, everything's gotten more expensive. Immigration, people wanted him to deport the worst of the worst criminals. Instead, they're killing Americans and they're surveilling everybody. Stopping wars, all he's done is start new wars. The 2 wars he promised to stop, the Ukraine war, that's gotten worse. And the ceasefire in Gaza, that's a fake ceasefire. Israel's still killing civilians. And then, the last one, what was it? I don't know. The economy, immigration, war, and then whatever. Donald Trump has just been a failure. I had another one, but I'll think of it later. Regardless.
Closing the Kennedy Center doesn't help.
No, the Kennedy Center, also total distract. Oh, Epstein. Epstein. Promised to release the Epstein files. Instead, they've made things incredibly worse for them. You can't think of Donald Trump now and not think of what he allegedly did with children. Everybody in this White House is just a total freak. I mean, like, name one person in his cabinet who isn't associated with Epstein and this cabal. Maybe J.D. Vance, because nobody wanted him there. Nobody invited him. I don't know. But it's just an absolute train wreck. So if the Democrats just run on bold progressive issues, they should be able to get anybody to vote for them.
Does everyone else think that that's true across the board? Because sometimes, and again, I'm not a strategist. I just feel like it really depends on, where it is. So that was my fault, honestly, for asking a blanket question like that, because I do think that in places like Texas, we do have to win back Latinos. I think that that's going to be important. And I think that there are places where Black voters feel like they're being ignored. Also in Texas, with the state Senate race, there's a lot of conversation about how to get Black folks to show up. Will every candidate want to speak to Black voters? Danielle, have you noticed anything?
I mean, I'll say this, that one, I don't think that you can have an honest conversation as a Democrat without talking about the fact that we need to safeguard our democracy. I think that this idea that we can bypass anything before we say that Donald Trump has raided an election office. Donald Trump has arrested journalists. Donald Trump has undermined our democracy over the last 10 years, and we've pretty much allowed it to happen in thinking that the worst things that he said wouldn't come to fruition, and they have. And so I think that for any candidate that is looking to win, they have to talk about accountability as much as they talk about affordability. You cannot just talk about kitchen table issues without talking about the fact that there are people whose entire kitchen table has been tossed over by ICE, whose homes have been raided and broken into by Donald Trump's slave patrollers. And so when we're talking about the issues that he's failing on, the reason why I think that Republicans in these super red areas are going for Democrats or a sensible candidate is because they don't like the messiness. Let's be clear. Nobody wanted to see mothers getting shot in the head. No one wanted to see a lawful gun owner executed in front of them. No one feels good about seeing a 5-year-old with a Spider-Man backpack and fluffy little ears being taken into prison and then watching that little baby become lethargic until we had courageous elected officials that went to the detention center and demanded his release. And so I think that for Democrats to win, you actually have to deal with the underbelly that they've tried to pretend doesn't exist, right? And I think that it's important for them to talk about the issues, of course, the fact that no one can afford anything, the fact that Donald Trump has made the economy worse, that he's weakened our dollar, that he's being used in cryptocurrency as a money laundering scheme. Like, there are so many things that I think can be winning issues for Democrats, but you cannot sit down in front of the American people and bypass and just start talking about kitchen table issues without talking about cementing our democracy and what you're going to do it where you are with the power that you have.
I have a quick question for Katie. Jumping off of what Danielle said and trying to restore our democracy, put some real guardrails in place, hold Trump accountable. What is the impact of the next couple of months Democrats, sure. Let's say we're perfect on messaging. We try to be. All the messaging is there. And in the meantime, Trump is causing more chaos. More is happening. More people are being, detained unlawfully by ICE. God forbid, more bloodshed, right? And we still are not able to hold him accountable. And the American people are still looking at Democrats who don't have the power to do anything right now. And they're saying, do something about this. Does are voters going to become so fatigued that they're not even feeling hopeful by the time we get to November because it feels so far away?
I mean, wow, what a loaded question. Here's the deal. I mean, I don't want to be Betty Buzzkill here, but if y'all all know me on this screen right now to be a straight shooter. If the economy was better, people wouldn't give a shit. I'm just going to be very honest. I think we would be more firmly entrenched in corners if the economy was doing better. Everything that I'm hearing so far is very echoey of November 2024. And the one thing that I think was a takeaway from that was a lot of people said that no matter how much you want to put democracy on the ballot, people are not necessarily focusing on that. Do I think the self-owns from this administration have made it easier for the Democrats? Yes. But I don't think that there's a wholesale kind of approach to this. I think this is one of the most unique years because I think it's a very individualized race assessment. I think it's not only jurisdictionally and geographically relevant, but I also think it depends on who's running and the actual people that are running. Specifically, the authenticity of the candidate is exactly what's going to be making a difference. I think the problem that we have is this. We conflate often the role of our electeds in DC with what's happening in our own backyards. And I think that you're going to find a more, divided way that people are looking at these ballots in November. I don't think people are going to be doing necessarily vote D all the way down, vote blue all the way down. I think you're going to be seeing people that are going to be a lot more selective in their picking and their choosing of what happens, because you may see incredible state representatives in Texas breaking quorum and fighting and doing really badass stuff. And then you're having this unceasing frustration with people conceding in DC and making these policy decisions and capitulating on things that impact us nationally. So I think that there's a lot of conflict in the way that people are looking at this. So I may feel uplifted and inspired and encouraged, Kevin, with what's happening maybe in my own state. But let me be clear, that's not Florida. But I may be frustrated with what I think is happening on the national level with some of my electeds in DC and some consistent letdowns. And so I think that unfortunately, it is a very long runway between February 2nd and November of 2026. And I do think that the Trump kind of scheme has been to rationalize short-term pain for long-term gain. And I think the way they're looking at it is a lot of these problems we're having now in terms of popularity and 36% approval rating for Trump, which is the lowest he's ever had in 2 terms. And you took the Latino approval rating from 46 to 26, right? I mean, they're looking at this and they're rationalizing as it's short term as I raid Fulton County, as I gerrymander and illegally rig elections in multiple states across the country, and as I totally demolish civil rights and DOJ. All of that is happening, because at the end of the day, it's going to become irrelevant whether I feel good going into November because I've now rigged it so much so that there's no election integrity. And so who cares if I felt good going into November if my vote's not going to count because they're pulling me out of the voting lines because mail-in voting doesn't happen anymore. And they say, you look black or brown or you look Asian, I'm going to take you out of the line. I'm going to hold you in detention at Whipple in Minneapolis. And then once the time has come for you to vote, I'm going to let you out and your vote didn't count.
I know these are real fears that people are concerned about, and I think I think that it would benefit Democrats to start talking about that now, and to start talking about what it is that they're going to do to protect their constituents in their particular districts and make sure that people are going to be able to vote. I think that's really important. I'm curious to know sort of anyone's thoughts here about how Democrats in Washington are handling messaging, because I think something that I struggle with is seeing myself as a progressive, but also feeling like I can be a bit, I'm a bit more pragmatic than I think a lot of people are. And I think a lot of people don't really understand working within the mechanisms that we have. And people will get upset about, for example, Democrats in the Oversight Committee voting to hold the Clintons in contempt, right? People won't understand that because they read a headline, and I feel like Democrats are not coming out and explaining, well, we want to set the tone that no one is above the law, so that when we push to hold Pam Bondi in contempt, Republicans don't have a reason to not support that. Or, the deal that was struck in the Senate this past weekend with Chuck Schumer and the White House to pass those 5 appropriation bills and give DHS a 2-week spending. That, to me, looking at that was the best outcome that Democrats could get, because, and people may not get this, and I don't think that Democrats are doing a good job at explaining this, Republicans gave up their leverage. I'm not one to give Chuck Schumer too much credit, but that was a smart move. I mean, we'll see if it pays off or not. But in the meantime, like, how many levers do we really have? So I guess my question is, are Democrats in DC doing a good enough job getting people to understand what they can do now and why they're making the choices that they're making?
Yeah, I just want to push back on that, actually. I don't think Senator Schumer did a good job with that. In fact, I think this was the moment to hold strong on ICE, and instead it's given the Republicans time to maybe make some reforms and also let the momentum kind of cool down a little bit, because unless more news happens in the next 2 weeks or so, this was the moment right here. And it's just another instance where you're allowing the Republicans to continue funding ICE. It's basically telling the country that ICE is too essential, that we have to keep funding it to make sure that they can still operate and they can still kill immigrants and Americans. By the way, we don't talk enough about the immigrants who are killed by ICE. They kill immigrants, and then there's people dying in the detention centers too. So it's absolutely absurd what's happening right now. And I think connecting it to the economy is also important for Democrats, because this is a massive misuse of our tax dollars right now. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars going to ICE. And they're claiming that the reason you don't have a home, the reason you can't afford anything is because these illegal aliens, as they say, are buying up all the homes and they're taking all the health insurance. How is that the case? That's literally not true at all. They're completely detached from reality. So I think Democrats should be messaging on, let's use those billions of dollars that's being wasted in ICE to attack Americans and attack immigrants, and put that towards healthcare, housing, infrastructure, education, childcare.
I guess.
Well, the problem is all the billions of dollars was already appropriated in the big bullshit bill last year. And I think what I'm not hearing DC emphasize enough is that Democrats stood in the way and stood in the breach and said, this is the Republicans own this big bullshit bill, because right now, all of that money that we're seeing being deployed right now for ICE, CBP, et cetera, DHS, that was all from last year. And I don't think that it's clear enough, because I agree that I think this was a leverage point that probably wasn't done elegantly enough, right? I think people haven't linked it enough to understand that we already have this money already set aside and being used or earmarked for years to come. You got to actually stop all funding, and then you got to figure out a way of clawing back the funding. And and that takes people with balls in DC. And that's why you have to elect people to go to DC that are willing to fight to be able to get that done.
Yeah. I would add too, because both of what was said is absolutely correct. I fundamentally disagree with the fact that Chuck Schumer has done anything right over the last several years. I think that him and Hakeem Jeffries, to me, are an absolute embarrassment. I think that you can see, based on polls, that they have had the people have been on their side to do something and are asking them to do something. And if that means to shut the government down so that people stop dying in detention centers, that children stop being abducted, that people stop being tortured. I mean, I talked about this the other day on my own show. ACLU came out with their report that talked about the sexual abuse and torture that was happening that is happening at the hands of these detention officers. You have one that just stood trial for rape and admitted to that, and is possibly going to be serving 15 years in prison. So I don't want to hear from Democrats, and I don't think that the American people want to hear from Democrats that, oh, they just need better training or that they just need body cameras. Because if better training and body cameras actually worked, then we wouldn't have the number of Black people that have become hashtags just in the beginning of the 21st century that we know of can rattle off at least 10, 15, 20 names on the top of our heads if we're talking about body cams and training people better. And as so many people have said, we don't need better trained slave patrollers. We don't need better trained Nazis. What we need is to actually defund and reappropriate those funds to the institutions and the departments that have been gutted by this administration. And so when I look at the polling on this, and I'm thinking to myself, why isn't Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries looking at the polling on this, and instead just kicking the can down the road? Because that's what they do with these bills. Oh, we'll get to it in 2 weeks, and hoping that the American people have a memory of a gnat and won't remember in 2 weeks that a man was shot dead on the street, that a woman was shot dead, that we needed to even have Renee Nicole Good to be murdered, to even hear about a Keith Porter, to even hear about the other 7 people that had been killed this year. And again, that doesn't go to discuss the people that are dying in detention, the amount of children that are in detention centers, right? So I think that it is such a bigger issue than us saying like, oh, we'll get back to this in 2 weeks. Like, whenever anybody says that Democrats don't have power, it's amazing to me what Republicans are able to do when they're in the minority. It's amazing to me how they have read the manual that Democrats clearly don't read at all. So I think that they are an embarrassment, and they should really think about that as all of their seats are coming up.
I want to ask a quick question before Malcom or Rep. Plesa jump in, which is I always want to be clear that like my stance is based on how much information I have. People can only do with, the information that they have. And so I'm not super familiar with appropriations. That's something that I try my best to understand. But when I look at this situation, and I want someone to correct me if I'm wrong, please. If we were to go into a government shutdown, if we were to stand strong on this and go the Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy route, which I wish Democrats in the Senate would just do, if we were to go that route and hold the line and let the government go into a shutdown, that does not stop ICE. These roving raids continue. ICE is already funded. They'll continue to move. They'll continue to do all of this. So my issue is, what does that solve in the meantime? And isn't there potential for there to be even more blowback on Democrats? Because Democrats are just not good at controlling the narrative, and Republicans are. And I think that the one shot that we had, they blew back in November. That was the only time that it looked like the American people were really behind Democrats, and now they don't trust them. And I know you all see what I post on Instagram every day. I try to, make the news accessible to people. And anytime that there's anything where I'm like, a judge ruled this way or anything is happening, they're like, it won't matter. Democrats are not reliable. That's what everyone's response is. So I do fear going into a government shutdown, allowing ICE to just continue and allowing even more things to, fall by the wayside. So am I missing something there? Or are we just saying, like, is there something that Democrats can do that maybe I'm not catching?
Well, I think that, this conversation around what was actually in the big, awful bill is one that we need to continue to have. Because it was a choice that was made. It was a choice to kick millions of people off of healthcare, to do a couple of things, to fund tax breaks for the wealthiest people in the world, and to fund Trump's secret mass police, and to embolden them through their rhetoric and through their wink, wink, nod, nod, do whatever the hell you want. We'll give you a pardon if things get really bad. That has unleashed these people, many of whom, according to reporting, have been members of the Proud Boys, are avowed white supremacists. And so I do think people's concern about this, the outrage about this is important, but I do think it is critical to draw a line back to sort of where this began. The current debate we're having right now does not, as has been said in this conversation, does not rescind the funds that were appropriated in the big awful bill. And that's why, Democrats spend a lot of time trying to fight to stop that bill from being signed into law in the first place. But I do think that any opportunity you have to show people what side you're on, it is important to show people what side you're on. I do think that the perennial debate within our party, particularly in this second iteration of Trump, has been one that I've been very clear about. This has always been a debate between fighters and folders. I want to be crystal clear that as vice chair of this party, I'm on team fight. I have been unabashed in my criticisms on some of the things that we've done. But at the same time, I've also been crystal clear that the way forward to this party is to not spend every single day saying that Democrats suck, that nobody wants to join a pity party. And I want people to just think about this. If you've ever been to a party and you have a promoter standing outside and they say, you know what, you should really come into this party. The drinks are watered down. All the lights are on. I mean, the big homophobic headlights, those are on. And like the DJ is just DJing from his phone. So yeah, we'd love you to join. Who the hell wants to go to that? And so I think that in this moment, we have to do multiple things at once. And it's unfortunate that we have to do multiple things at once. But one thing we have to do is continue to hold our own party accountable, to call us higher, to say that in this moment that is existential, that we have to step up and meet this moment with the type of ferocity and the seriousness of vision that meets this moment. So yeah, we have to do that. But the second thing that we have to do in this moment is to also be crystal clear about the things that we are doing that is working. So I talked about my first response that we have won 89.2% of all elections that have been held since Donald Trump has been back in office. Why has that happened? Because people have shown up not just to campaign events, but they've shown up in their own communities to speak out about what's going on. There is a reason that Donald Trump is going into Fulton County. There's a reason he said today that Republicans should take over elections in 14 or 15 places. It's not because he thinks things are going well. It's because he recognized that he is in a corner and that the American people are rejecting what he is offering to them in resounding fashion. And also, we should not poo-poo the litigation strategy, which has been really, it has not stopped every bad thing, but we should be very clear that there have been so many instances of us taking this administration to court and actually being successful. The Democratic Party led a lawsuit against Donald Trump's executive order, trying to basically saying he can control all elections. People might not remember this, but Donald Trump signed a little thing with his little Sharpie saying, I can decide how elections go. The Democratic Party sued him. And a judge just a couple of days ago not only said, Donald Trump, you can't do this, but has said, you cannot do this for the foreseeable future. We are enjoining you from doing this moving forward. That you cannot say that people must provide proof of citizenship when they go in to vote. That you cannot say that people need to show up with certain documents to prove their citizenship at the polls. So we have been successful. And a lot of Donald Trump's responses has been in response to our success. But when I say our success, it's not just the success of the Democratic Party. It's not the success of a couple of people sitting in an office building in DC. It is the American people who are saying that, you know what, maybe I haven't been registered as a Democrat. Maybe I didn't vote in the last election. Maybe I'm still registered as a Republican, but I am sick of this shit. And I'm going to show up to vote for whoever is going to be on the other side of this. And so I think that in this moment, we have to fight what's happening as well as build up this party. And a part of my commitment as an unabashed progressive Democrat was to not walk away from the party and say, I hope y'all figure it out. It was for me to roll up my sleeves, get some oil on my face, have some people say, you're not doing enough. That's okay. Because when I hear people say the Democratic Party is not doing enough, when I hear people say they are frustrated by what's going on, that does not offend me. It does not anger me. It inspires me because people know that we deserve more from our government. And they are asking every single person who has raised their hand, as I had multiple times on that Bible, and swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. They want to see us actually uphold the Constitution. And that demands us to push back against this administration. It demands us to celebrate the wins that we are having along the way. And it demands us to continue to litigate within the system that we have. And I think we can do all three of those things. And we're going to continue to do all three of those things. I wish I could say to you that as vice chair of the DNC, I get to control what congressional leaders do. I don't. I recognize that our job, a lot of the job of the DNC, is not sexy. Our job is to build the infrastructure so that candidates can go and flip seats that Donald Trump won by 17 points and have a 31-point flip. Our job is to do what we're doing right now with the When We Count initiative, which is going to be, and already is, the most well-funded and the most aggressive campaign to actually register people to vote, to do partisan voter registration that the Democratic Party has ever engaged in. Our job is to get people to say, hey, you know what? I want to run for office. I want to run a campaign. I want to figure out how to get engaged in our community and to make sure we're setting up the pieces for them to do that. And then there are a lot of other people in the ecosystem that also have jobs. The activists who, no matter what we do, are like, you know what? Not enough. I love that. I welcome that. Because as somebody who is in government, I always say that everything that happens, it happens because a political window of opportunity is opened. That window of opportunity doesn't get opened from inside the building. It gets opened from outside the building. Let me just say, because I know I've been talking for a little bit. Let me just say this perfect example I think about all the time. When George Floyd was murdered, many states, including Pennsylvania, advanced a bunch of gun safety, police reform, a whole bunch of stuff. But I always say to people, the bills that we passed were not new. They were not new. These were bills that had languished session after session after session after session. You had good Democrats who were fighting for them, who were introducing them, who were going to committees with Republican chairmen who said these bills will pass over my dead body. And what changed? In Pennsylvania, I can tell you what changed. After George Floyd's murder, we had 2 weeks of protests in 67 of our 67 counties every single day. To get 66 of our 67 counties to do anything in Pennsylvania the same, that is a heavy lift. That allowed us to not just pass those bills, but to pass those bills unanimously, to have the same Judiciary Chairman, Rob Kaufman, who said these bills will pass over my dead body, vote yes on those bills because people on the outside demanded it. And so we're going to keep building the infrastructure. And then people on the outside are going to keep calling us to do more. And they're going to also step up to run for office and then get inside the building as I am and as other people are to change things from the inside. It's always going to take that inside-outside strategy.
All right. Thank you. I have one more question before we move on. And I want to jump off that. I'm sorry. I do want to say, I know we're like closing in on the last couple minutes. I promise not to hold you guys. Is everyone good for like 5 more minutes? Yeah. Right. Sorry. Thank you so much. I do want to jump off of what you just said. You used an example about, those summer 2020 protests. And I think all of us remember them really well. And I sort of want to get the room's thoughts on the movement that we're seeing, the No Kings protests, right? And all of this stuff. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm tired. I'm so sick of seeing people plan. There's like a No Kings protest planned for I think it's March 27th. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, it's March 28th.
I'm like, what? I get it. And again, I will say I have friends who are I'm not again in the streets person. I have a 13-year-old kid. I'm not doing that. I respect it, and I have friends who are activists who say, listen, these events bring people together. They find community and they find ways to to join mutual aid groups, to start doing real work, and I get that. My point is, it feels like that's all that's happening on the ground across the country. Is it effective? Is this going to do anything? Is the No Kings movement going to carry us into the midterms if Democrats are fucking up messaging and we really can't count on any of that? Is the fervor that we feel in the streets, is the progressive like anger and angst that we feel, is that going to carry us through, or is this just like pink pussy hats again?
Can I just jump in on this one? So in 22, when I was a no-name candidate, like literally nobody thought I was going to win, but my mom and God, who put this in my heart to be a public servant.
That was very Texas. Thank you.
Well, I mean, when my stump speech, the whole thing I said is I have marched, I have protested, I have signed those ballot petitions, and I had voted. But nothing has changed. We need to win elections. So I think everything kind of works together, right? We need the protest because we need people to feel like they're part of a community. We need people to meet new people, right? We need people to get together and go, oh, we should go protest. And then we're going to do a postcard party. And then we're going to go block walk. And then we're going to go show up at my congressman's town hall and, make him leave because Republicans can't answer any hard questions right now. So none of this stuff happens in a vacuum, kind of like what we've been discussing tonight. The bills don't happen in a vacuum. Our wins don't happen in a vacuum, but change, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I've heard progressive a lot on this call, but I think that we need to realize that the definition of progressive is not what we are thinking it is anymore. Because in states like mine, we are taking books out of libraries. We are defunding schools. We are telling people what bathroom they're allowed to go into. We have potty police, okay? This is not small government. We have people that are leaders in our state that are taking money from donors who then are allowing their platforms to have child exploitation on them. This is supposed to be the party of protecting children. Like I said, we're defunding our schools, but what we're not funding is our roads, right? We're not funding our first responders. I sit on the pensions committee, and we always talk about how we're supposed to be backing our blue and talking about our first responders, but we all know that the best way to have a good life is to have a good paying job, probably a union job where you're going to get a pension when you retire. And states like mine are rolling back those things. So we need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And we have to understand that we are going to be in situations where we are going to get outfunded. But we have to never stop showing up in all the places, even the uncomfortable ones, where voters are. Because what we're seeing and what they're seeing, more importantly, what they're seeing, that's why they're gerrymandering our maps. That's why they're asking for our voter data. That's why they removed us from ERIC. I don't know if you guys know about the electronic voter rolls that was supposed to unify our whole country so that we knew, hey, if you live in Texas and you're about to move to Colorado, you're not registered in two places. They were supposed to prevent voter fraud. Well, we've shut that down, right? So we're not communicating cross state. This is all intentional. And as somebody who is a daughter of immigrants, I've heard these stories before. That's why my family fled these countries, right? We know what happens when they burn books and they shoot people in the middle of town square. And you don't have to be a Democrat or a Republican to know when there's an authoritarian government that's trying to take over. When they're building ballrooms and people are standing in food lines, right? Mm-hmm. And so we kind of have to be able to have conversations about, accountability and affordability, but also when your enemy is messing up, when they are screwing up, don't stand in their way. People are turning on Trump right now. It's happening every day. And I'm just really, really excited because in Texas, we have filled every legislative House seat. We have filled every state Senate seat. Those 5 maps that they think that they're going to take, the numbers are looking that they're not going to pick up all the ones that they thought they're going to do. Because like I said, they've been so xenophobic. They've been so extremely racist and anti-immigrant in a state like Texas, where we had people like George W. Bush. I would ask everybody right now to go and Google George W. Bush's speech at SMU where he talks about immigration. It brought a tear to my eye because we have moved so far, right? That progressive just basically means, hey, I want my water to be clean. I don't want it to go to a data plant to mine crypto. I want my roads to be safe, right? I don't want to sit in traffic, an hour on my way to work, an hour on my way back. I want to be able to send my kid to a safe school, right? I live in Texas, but I believe we can protect the Second Amendment and second graders at the same time. And when we saw that shooting in Uvalde, when we saw this craziness that's been happening in my state in 2018, the state legislature flipped 12 seats, right? Went Democrat. If they keep up this nonsense, it might be a good shot that we flip 8 seats in the House. We flipped one in the Senate. And this one in the Senate, if we keep it in November, it blocks Dan Patrick from being able to mess with our quorum rules. So every race matters. Every candidate, every person that is going to these protests, that is meeting somebody saying, hey, I like your I'm Antifa sign. You never know. Those ladies might connect. They're going to go block walking together. They're going to host a postcard party for me. They might be a monthly reoccurring donor of $25 a month to a campaign. And that's how you send, the first Democrat from Collin County to the state house. That's how you send the first Democrat from Tarrant County to the state house. That's how you get 51% of Republicans to vote for Democrats. And that's how you're seeing not just Hispanic communities, not just African-American communities, but my district is one of the largest Muslim districts in the state of Texas. It's also one of the largest Asian American districts in the state of Texas. When you got a party banning a whole group of people from buying land, they're not too keen to come out and vote for you anymore, right? So like I said, when your enemy is making a mistake, don't stand in their way, but we have to stay ready. And I think it's great. Let these people go out and protest. Why are you against
I don't mind the protest. I just want to know whether or not it's actually, enough. You know what I mean? I just sometimes worry that people think that this is it. Because the truth is a lot of those people are going to those protests, and that is all. I think that, to Katie's point, if the economy was better, people wouldn't give a shit about any of this. And I think that a lot of people would be checked out. When I see those signs at protests that say if Kamala won, I'd be at brunch, I'm like, that's the fucking issue. Because if Kamala won, I'd be doing this exact same work. I would just be holding her accountable. That is the thing that blows my mind. Any final thoughts from folks before we move on to the last?
I just want to add very quickly. I just got back from Minneapolis. Sometimes it's not the No King's Day that we need to be talking about. It's what's happening in these communities. Nobody took the folks in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all these other cities, but I just want to focus on MSP because I was there for a while. Nobody told them what to do. They just leaned into who they are. And the level of community organization there was the most humbling experience I've ever seen. I have never seen such measures of just decency, humanity, and kindness from total strangers. And I think sometimes that's even more powerful than those huge, 50,000 people showing up coverage that you may see on a No King's Day 2.0. When I posted that we have No King's Day 3.0 coming up on March 28th, the immediate response was, well, why is it so damn long away? Why is it so far away? And that was kind of hard to hear, because I understand that people seem to think it's so far away, but they're ignoring what's happening every day in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and what's happening in Portland right now, and what's happening in Oregon, what's happening in Maine, and what happens all the time. Even just this past Friday, they had a really big turnout here in Miami, which is super red, right? But we have our first Democratic mayor in the city of Miami in 30 years. I just want to say that there is something so ooh and ah when we see the big, huge turnouts that get national and international coverage. But the people that were showing up to Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good's memorial sites, that were offering me hot coffee and that were holding my hand when I was crying, those are the people that make me inspired to go do more and to be more obnoxious than I already am. And that is why that's the type of stuff, Kevin, that maybe we need to continue to uplift and let people know is happening, because I sometimes think that that's more impactful than maybe what we're seeing on these big days that get a lot of publicity and a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
Can I just say one very quick thing, because I think that everything that was said was really important. What I find the most inspiring too in this moment are the walkouts in high schools, and in, and through in high schools and at universities, that young people, right, that particularly in high school, that don't have the ability to vote, that they are walking out to protest against ICE, to protest against their classmates disappearing, right? And having read about that in their books and now witnessing it firsthand and wondering where somebody is that was in first period with them yesterday and is now gone, right? And I think that to me is really inspiring, because what they're not thinking about, right? What this regime is not thinking about is how they are activating generations of young people who are now going to look and remember and know where they were when people were being disappeared, when people were being picked up off of the street. And now they're going to be activated to either run for office themselves, become activists, become teachers, because they realize how important this moment is, and maybe how their parents' generation and the generation before them took things for granted that they're not going to take for granted, because they're not going to be afforded the same opportunities that their parents and grandparents were. And that's going to be the first time that we experience that in this country. So for me, those young people and their walkouts that are not, planned, some of them are spontaneous, like, they are inspiring, because it makes me think that young people are, they are paying attention, and they're using social media in a way to connect with one another, to lift each other up, and to protect one another.
Yeah. Josh, any final thoughts before we wrap up? Go to the last segment.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of young people, I mean, I was a junior in high school when Trump first won back in 2016. Trump has been the most dominant political voice throughout my entire adult life. And I've gone to every single protest this year. I was at the one in Los Angeles a few days ago. And let me just say, not only does it send a message to the Trump regime that they are deeply unpopular and they have a rude awakening coming, but it sends a message to all of us as well, because it tells Americans, hey, we can strike, we can get together, we can fight back against the system in other ways. And also it sends a message to the vulnerable communities, because we marched from downtown LA into Boyle Heights, which is a very Hispanic neighborhood. And people were just so surprised to see tens of thousands of people coming into that part of LA that never gets any attention on a national level. And it's like you're letting people know, hey, we stand with you. The American people do not support what these MAGA loyalists want, which they're basically a death cult. They celebrate when Americans are killed because we're considered extremist, socialist, liberal, insurrectionists, right? And they celebrate locking up immigrants. There's a lot of MAGA people who don't think they're deporting enough people. So we have to really fight in every channel. It has to be on every battlefield, whether it's legislatively, protesting, everything has to be, an all-together fight.
Yeah, I just want to say, and then guys, we are so over time. I sincerely apologize. I just want to say two quick things. One, going back to what Katie said about Minneapolis, I just always want to give credit when we talk about sort of how people in areas like Minneapolis come together so quickly. I want to give credit to the Black women in 2020 who really showed those communities how to come together, taught people about mutual aid. And that is why we are seeing places like Minneapolis and St. Paul be able to really snap into formation and protect one another. And it's because of those Black women activists who put their bodies on the line. And then when it comes, Can
I just say something? I really want to give a shout out. Katie, you mentioned this in your comment right now. Plano, we haven't been talking about this either, but Plano City Council also had a race on Saturday. And Plano sent to City Council the first African-American woman ever. And she was the more progressive candidate. I know those are nonpartisan races, so I'm not going to say she was a Democrat, but, we saw people crossing the line, crossing the aisle to vote for her. So we are meeting the moment, and we should be uplifting those voices. And these things, kids are watching. We just saw kids leave school in Austin to protest this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm really, 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 it's horrible that we've had to get here. But with every step that this country has gone back, we have seen that we can make progress and we can lead globally on being better. And I really am filled with hope on that. So shout out to Shun Thomas, Councilwoman-elect. Congratulations. I'm so excited to work with you in the City of Excellence, girl. We did it.
And when it comes to No Kings protest, I just want to defend myself because people are going to attack me for my previous comment. My only issue, Josh brought up going to
Not you getting out ahead of it.
Listen. Josh brought up going to demonstrations on Saturday, right? When we see these demonstrations, people are responding to things that are happening in real time. I think that that's a little different. My issue is when things like No Kings protests become like marquee events, and I worry that when Democrats, take back control and we win in 2028, guys, I swear to God, I promise you that whoever is in the White House, mark my words, will make a No Kings Day a federal holiday. We are going to Juneteenth No Kings Day. I promise you all of this, that is what's going to happen. And we're going to see merchandise at Target because people will forget about Target. So that is my issue with things that become sort of like commercialized, like marquee events. Anyway.
I hear that point. And can I also do what everybody did and just say this last thing? Danielle, you said something that just really sparked something. My last Instagram post was about my grandfather, Muhammad Kenyatta. And I would love for people to go and Google him. I'm going to be talking a lot more about him, but I was talking to his wife, my grandmother, and a part of what she said to me is people who were very involved in the civil rights movement, organizers of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, a lot of other things that they did. And I've been talking to her a lot to help me contextualize this moment that we're in. And she says something to me that I want people to hear. She said, baby, we did not know what we were doing. We did not know what we were doing, but we knew we had to do something. And we were throwing stuff at the wall. And so she's like, y'all look back at us like we were the geniuses who had it figured out. And so she's like, go do the thing. If it's run for office, go do that. If it's, have a podcast or use these platforms that you all do magnificently every single day, go do that. If it is showing up to a rally, go do that. All things work together for the good of those. All things work together for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And in this moment, like all things are working together, I think, in ways that I think we should really take stock of, and continue to just press forward. Do the thing that, is in your gut to do. And if you do that, I think we'll all be in a much better place. A lot of times people ignore that thing in their gut and hope that somebody else will do it. Don't wait on your neighbor. Your neighbor might literally be waiting on you.
Yeah. All right. I know we have to wrap up. We're going to come back with a quick rapid fire session. We're going to talk about the races that we all have our eyes on. But first, earlier today, I got to interview gubernatorial candidate in Texas, Gina Hinojosa. And I think that she has a really great message for Texas. So we're going to cut to that and be right back. I am joined today by gubernatorial candidate in Texas, Gina Hinojosa. Gina, thank you so much for being here with me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I absolutely want to talk about your race. I think it is such an interesting race and I really want to get into it. But first, I think we have to sort of talk about what we just saw happen in Texas. Of course, the congressional runoff finally happened. We know that people in Texas 18 have been without representation in Congress, but we knew that that was going to be a Democrat. But what we saw happen in the Senate race, where Democrat overperformed by more than 30 points, what was your immediate reaction to that, and what do you think that means for Texas Democrats this year?
I think that people are ready for change. And we know that in Texas, we've had 30 years of one party rule and government is broken. I think we can all agree with that. And politics are broken. So people were ready to kind of shrug off traditional labels and past alliances and try something new. And Taylor Ramett presented a vision for the future that is encompassing of all our families and that is putting Texans first and our prosperity and opportunities first instead of corporate interests. That's what we have seen for too long in Texas, is that Greg Abbott and the Republican political class have been putting corporate interests ahead of Texans. And despite being a world economic powerhouse as a state, too many Texans are struggling.
When you look at your party in Texas, I'm always so interested, and I try to be very careful when I talk about states like Texas, because it's such a unique set of circumstances. There's so much gerrymandering, so much at play. What do people maybe not know when, from the outside looking in, folks who want to support candidates in Texas and donate, because I think we need that support across the country, what do people not understand about the Democratic Party in Texas?
Well, we're a scrappy bench. We punch above our weight. As a Texas House member, I've been in the trenches for the last 10 years. And in 2021, I led the quorum break. Despite being in the minority, we were able to kill the most egregious parts of that bill because we fought to win. And that's what you should know about Texas Democrats. We've been fighting really this right wing radical movement for some time. We're pretty good at it at this point. And now you're seeing that we've got what it takes this election cycle to make the most of what will be a historic opportunity for 2026.
And looking at the midterm elections across the board in Texas, what do Texas Democrats need to achieve, if you can summarize it, for there to be real change felt in Texas?
So we need to do better with all groups, with all Texans, right? Some people say, oh, it's just Latino voters, just Black voters, just rural voters. No, it is an all of the above campaign strategy. We need to bring everyone along with us this November. For too long, Democrats have been apologists for a system that does not work. So I'm running on a platform of clean slate, fresh start. It's not 1, 2, 3 things that are going to make the difference for Texans. It is a reimagining of what our government should be doing. Texans work hard. We need a government that's working just as hard for Texans and their families as they do for themselves. And that's what I'm running on, is a clean slate, fresh start. Let's build something that actually supports and gives Texans a leg up instead of holding Texans back.
When you look at the way that Texans have been held back and the restrictions and the gerrymandering, is that where your campaign slogan, No Te Dejes, came from?
It's everything, right? It's our schools being taken over by corporate interests with the help of Greg Abbott. It is the fact that our electricity bills are going up more and more and more. And now Greg Abbott wants us to pay for data centers to have the most in the state. These are data centers owned by the richest men in the world. They should pay for themselves. Like, Texans are tired of being taken advantage of, all of us, right? And yes, the gerrymandering is part of that. That was just a slap in the face to all Texans, and especially to Black and brown Texans, to minimize our voice, try to take it away from us, to break up our political power by drawing lines that cut up our communities. That's just terrible. To do it in the middle of the done by anybody, like, that's a whole new thing. Like, that's just egregious. They're trying to take our voice and our vote, and we have to fight back, and we can win. What I see, they thought we would cower with the brutality of the ICE raids. They thought we would stay silent with the lies that they're telling us, but we're calling out the lies. We're marching in the streets. We're winning elections. Yes, Texans and Americans, that is our birthright, right? That is our inheritance. We have civil rights leaders who have showed us the way in the past. We call on that inheritance, and we do what we can with what we've got. And that's what you're seeing all across the state and all across this country.
I've mentioned it now a couple of times, all the things that are sort of happening at the hands of the Republican Party in Texas. If Texas is flipped blue, and whether we're talking about what you hope to achieve or what Democrats across the board, in Texas can achieve, what are the tangible things that would happen to improve the lives of people in Texas? What are some things that you are hoping to accomplish for those people?
So when Democrats win, when I win, I can tell you what I'm going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to have a clean slate look at all government spending, put away the vendor contracts, and prioritize, get back to basics, serving the needs of Texans. We have the most uninsured right now of any state. That's unacceptable. Again, we're an economic powerhouse because working Texans build that power. We should be able to get the benefit of our labor. And right now we're not. Health insurance is just a basic one. When you look at our schools, we're paying more in property taxes and our schools are shutting down. There are many, many Texans who don't even have a say in how their schools are operated anymore because Greg Abbott took control of their school district. I'm thinking Houston. I'm thinking Fort Worth, right? I'm thinking Beaumont. And so we need to give control back to those communities so they have a say in the most important thing that government does for our families, and that's educate our children, right? Those are some, what I'm talking about is just, again, a fresh start. We have to break with government of the past. It's not working for anybody but corporate interests. And it's time that we prioritize our taxpayer dollars that we spend and put into the system on Texans. And so that's what Texas will look like under my term as governor.
My very last question, I will let you get back to business, is what is your message to Texan voters, eligible voters who don't show up, who maybe they haven't participated in recent elections because they feel exhausted of being gerrymandered or because they've been made to feel like their voices aren't able to, affect real change? How do we get those people to show up?
Here's what I'd say. If your voice didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to take it from you so hard, right? We know that when Texans show up to vote, it'll be a new day in Texas. Republicans know that all too well. Greg Abbott knows that all too well. And that's why he's trying to suppress our vote. But let me tell you what, he could not gerrymander the governor's race. Everybody in this state has a say in the governor's race and all of the Senate race, all the statewide races. So he might be trying to rig the congressional races. He can't do it with his gerrymandered maps for the Texas governor's race and the U.S. Senate race. So I'm asking you, please, to know your power, to use it. No te dejes. Like, fight back, fight for yourself, for your families, for your community. We can bring in a new day in Texas, but that's only if we have the courage to fight to win. And I'm happy to be in this with you. I'm honored to be running for governor, and I can only do it with your support and your help.
Gina, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I will make sure to tell my audience to go onto your website and learn more about you.
Thank you. GinaForTexas.com. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. So before I let all of you go, because I've kept you entirely too long, we're just going to go around the room. And I want to hear from you folks. What races in 2026, be it super local or a big mainstream race, are you keeping your eye on? What are you paying attention to? I'm going to go to Danielle first.
Yeah. So, one, this has been great. So thank you so much for having me on. But as people who watch me know, I'm in New York, right? And we just obviously had Mamdani win. So I'm looking at the Democratic Socialist Party in New York. There are a lot of candidates for state assembly, and I'm looking to see how they're going to win, if they can kind of ride the wave of Mamdani right now and really shift this deeply corporatist a state, right? And see if they can really ride on his progressive ideas and infiltrate New York in a way that I think we've been waiting on.
Yeah. Malcom?
So the Pennsylvania 7th Congressional District was one of the seats that we lost in the last election. It used to be represented by my good friend, Susan Wild. And so we have a big Democratic primary there. Bob Brooks, who's the president of the Pennsylvania State Firefighters, is getting, a lot of attention. He's been endorsed by Bernie and Pete Buttigieg and Governor Shapiro and a lot of people. But whoever comes out of that primary, that district is so emblematic of the types of voters and the types of communities that we lost ground with, that we need to win back. And so I think Democrats are going to win that race, but the question is, like, what are the margins? And I think that district is going to tell us a lot about what's going to happen in 28 as well, to be honest.
Josh.
I've been interviewing exciting candidates all around the country. One race that I really am interested in is the Wisconsin governor race. Where Francesca Hong is running. She's a Democratic socialist and honestly has the ability to win. And we need somebody like that in charge in a state like Wisconsin. You got to make Wisconsin blue. You got to have real fighters in some of these states that have to go for the Democrats if we're going to win the White House in 2028.
Frep?
Well, I'm watching my race. I run every 2 years, and out of 150 seats in the Texas legislature, I'm one of those handful of competitive races. In 22, I won by 800. In 24, I won by 3,000. So I'm moving it, but it's still considered very competitive. But outside of my race, I'm also going to be helping a lot of other candidates in ruby red counties flip their districts, because we know, and if we're going to perform as good as we did on Saturday and the Republicans are going to do as bad as they've been doing, Texas really has the opportunity to, if not flip the House, make it a lot more painful. And when that happens, I just want people to understand, when that happens, it forces the other chamber to begin to moderate. So they start having to focus on the things that we've been asking them to. You want increase in minimum wage, that conversation becomes more palatable to them when they realize that power is about to shift. And so if you're in Texas, get involved in a race, because, it's in play right now, and it's going to be exciting when we send a Democrat to the governor's office. Let me tell y'all, Texas Democrats, civil rights, voting rights, we were leaders in this, okay? Texas used to be a blue state, so don't count us out. We're about to make history again. I'm really excited to see it.
Katie?
I'm watching all of those attorneys general races in all of the states. If there's anything that I have learned, are the governor races are important, because we need strong governors that are going to stand up to this administration. But our attorneys general, I've been incredibly proud of our Democratic attorneys general that have been racing to court to fight for all people, regardless if they are voting red or not. And so I'm watching those, because I feel like those attorneys general races are always really undercovered, right? Like, nobody really focuses on them. Nobody really talks about them. But when you see people like Rob Bonta stepping up in California and Dan Rayfield in Oregon, right? Like, when you see Keith Ellison in Minnesota, these are the people that are fighting hard. And so I'm a little biased because I'm a lawyer, but I do think that these are roles that people just don't pay attention to, which is why I'm watching those really carefully. And I just want to say, in George Floyd Square, there's a sign that says, where there's people, there's power. And I think that applies to everything that we're watching and everything we've talked about tonight.
Thank you for that. And I just want to end this with a quick plea to Newark Mayor Ras Baraka. I have been begging him. This is my campaign. I have a month and 21 days to convince Ras Baraka to please jump in the New Jersey Senate race and primary Cory Booker, because I'm sick and tired. I had to bully my senator to go to an ICE detention facility where a man died, and it took him a month to show up, and he has yet to call for the facility to be closed. Cory Booker is the only Democrat in Congress from New Jersey's delegation who has not called for Delaney Hall to be closed. He asked for it to be improved, and he is the person leading the charge for ICE agents to wear body cameras because that will stop them. It's not like we've been filming them murder people in 4K. So, Roz Baraka, if by any chance you're watching this, because I'm going to text you the link, please jump in the race. We have a month and 21 days. Thank you guys so much for chatting with me tonight. I'm so grateful to sit in a room with such brilliant folks and ask you questions, and you make me smarter. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Abolish ICE.